Lots of issues there to talk about between Manmohan Singh and President Obama. All priority really. In the studio with me is the United States Consul General to Mumbai, Paul Folmsbee. Many thanks for joining us on the show. Pleasure to have you. Let's talk about the nuclear issue first. Not properly debated in the Indian Parliament. It's agreed, but it still hasn't been implemented. Do you expect any progress on the implementation side from this visit?
Well, first of all, Sid, thanks for having me on the program. It's great to be here. You know, actually, from my perspective, I think the key issues surrounding the nuclear deal have really been resolved. And I think that there may be a few little details that will be resolved in the next round of meetings in Washington during the Prime Minister's visit. But I really think that we're rapidly going to get beyond the nuclear deal. I think that the main issues to be resolved have been resolved. I think it's a great thing. So.
Well, for instance, the first story we're talking about India Inc. wanting more access to the most important trading partner India has to date. United States and India they don't have a bilateral trade agreement. Do you expect that to happen? Is that something that should happen?
I think you're going to see all those issues on the table, and I think people are going to be talking about them a lot during the visit. I think there's going to be a number of interesting deliverables. I'm really excited actually about the CEO forum that's been put together and really revitalized. And so you're going to see a lot of senior leaders there, both from the United States side and the Indian side. I know that Ratan Tata, Mukesh Ambani, and others are there in Washington now, I believe, soon to be at least. And so there's going to be some interesting things coming out of that. So let's see what happens.
In fact, Consul General, speaking about CEOs, we spoke with Greg Page, the chairman and CEO of Cargill, one of the world's biggest food management companies, a strong presence in India. He told us about his concerns when it came to subsidies as well as tariffs in regards to doing business in India.
And clearly the U.S. attitude around subsidies has been an impediment for India and some other countries, and clearly the U.S. has concerns about market access on other products and services, and so I hope they'll make progress.
Do you think they will, though? Because it's a massive issue, and it's such a politically charged issue.
I guess I have the luxury of living in hope, and so I do believe that in the end that there's an increasing realization of this interdependence. I listened to Mr. Obama's speech yesterday in China, and his forthright acknowledgement of the interdependence of the two economies is something that people in China and frankly people in the U.S. need to hear. And I think the same thing is true there. 1.2 billion people that need to be fed in a world where the weather isn't perfect every year. Having a global food system, I mean, when you think about it, the arrogance of having bilateral trade in food, it makes no sense. It may be fine to have bilateral trade in television sets, but in food, we need to have a global food system that's built on sound multilateral principles, and so I really hope that they'll spend time on it.
So, Consul General, Cargill is not alone in regards to what American companies want in regards to lowering tariffs, making it easier for American businesses to do business in India. Do you expect, how receptive is the Manmohan Singh administration?
Well, I think on that question specifically, I can't answer for the government of India and their views on this. I do know that there's increasingly a sense of cooperation between both countries, and there's a recognition that we need to resolve a lot of these issues on a bilateral basis and, of course, on a multilateral basis. So I'm actually very optimistic some of these issues will be resolved. But it's true, it's extremely complicated. There's a big web of different political issues here that will have to be resolved. But if we put our minds to it, I think they can be resolved.
And that's just it. I mean, there's so many issues, right from Afghanistan, Pakistan on the political and security side to what we're just talking about. President Obama, the relationship between the President and the Prime Minister is relatively new. There was a very warm relationship with former President George W. Bush. If you were to put out a laundry list of what Washington wanted, what would be on the top of the U.S. list?
Well, you know, that's a tough question, because you know the thing that I would point out is that the U.S. and India have a complicated and very deep relationship. We have a large Indian-American population that's providing great connectivity to both countries. We have a tremendous amount of shared values, and so there's a lot of things that are happening both ways. And so, you know, just to say one or two particular things, I think you're going to see agreements that are going to be fascinating and really productive in education, in business. It's going to be just across the board, and I think that's the takeaway. It's that big a relationship.
And President Obama has sort of a rock star status around the world. He goes to China, and they make T-shirts out of him. We're waiting for him to come here and to see how he's received here. But the question is, if you were to look at what President Obama can do himself, personally, his administration, to Indo-U.S. relations, what could he do?
Well, you know what, I would say, I think that former President Bush started the process, and I think President Obama is continuing. And we're going to take this relationship higher and higher. Ambassador Tim Romer has been just super enthusiastic about all the different connection points we have with India. And so you're just going to see an expanding relationship. That's all I can really say on that.
Sure. In terms of defense, that's a huge area of cooperation and potentially even bigger cooperation. The U.S. F-15 is one of the players, is a very strong contender to be India's leading fighter airplane. We have also got tank as well as other weapons orders in the works. All that, of course, needs political government clearance. Do you see this particular visit speeding along that process?
Oh, I do, absolutely. And you know, actually, you could have mentioned a number of other sales that have come about. The P-8, the C-130, the C-12, I'm sorry, C-17. Those sales have occurred, I think, around $13 billion, if I'm not mistaken.
Huge, absolutely.
So you're going to just see more of that. It's just a continuing and expanding relationship.
Actually, I noticed the other day that Mumbai's police force has got helmets and bulletproof gear made in the United States as well. Lastly, Consul General, education. A recent study showed that Indian students were the #1 group of students for the 8th year in a row. More than 130,000 students, I'm one of them, who studied in the United States. That's an expanding...
Well, it is, and in fact, actually, as I was just coming over here, I think I saw something on the wire about 3 American universities signing a deal as well. So these educational relationships keep expanding, and I see it at every corner, every turn. So actually, it's 103,000 students in the U.S., by the way, not 130.
Okay. Consul General Paul Folmsbee, thank you so much for joining us. Do come back again.
Thank you, Sid. Good to be here.